had never prayed like that. At 29 years old, I had been to 8 years of Jewish day school. I grew up with a religious father, and yet I never prayed in that specific way. And when I woke up next morning of 10/7, and I'm reading what had happened, the massacre of Jews, the biggest since the Holocaust, it shook me to my core. But the aftershock in the days to come is what ignited me the most and what surprised me the most, and it was the silence of Hollywood. It was the silence of all of these Jewish comedians and actors and icons that I had spent my life wanting to emulate, wanting to be. But they had nothing to say about this. And neither did so many of our allies with millions and millions and millions of followers. If anything, they were posting against the Jewish people. And so very quickly, I realized that what this amazing Christian woman had meant when she had asked me to ask God for direction was that it's exactly that. You don't ask God for things, you ask God to guide you. And so very quickly, my life changed within a matter of days. Me and my business partner, who is Israeli, we went to Jewish day school together. He's here today. His name is Omri Durrani. He's an amazing man. We grew up knowing each other since we were 6 years old under the same Jewish banner, under the same Jewish day school. And we were so upset by the silence we saw that we decided to open up our production company doors to nonprofits of Jewish faith, of Christian faith, working with nonprofits that were willing to speak up and be bold and be brave. And we decided that we would help them on the social media battlefield. So very quickly, everything started coming into place. And the first video we made, I put myself in it because it was hard to find someone else to be in it. There was so much fear. That first video got 10 million views right off the bat, and I knew at that very moment what God had in store for me. I did. I knew exactly what God wanted me to be doing with my time. And so it started with one video, it went to 2 videos, and I can now say proudly, we have reached over 1 billion views and impressions on all of our content since 10/7 in the last year. 1 billion views and impressions educating young people, combating misinformation, and fighting against the poisonous propaganda that our enemies have spewed into the internet ecosystem. And while I am only on the social media battlefield this year, I have gotten to meet my brothers and sisters in Israel who are fighting on the real battlefield. Some of which who have lost their lives. I've met with families whose kids are still hostage in Gaza. We have to pray to God that we get them back, but we have to do something about that. I had dinner the other night with a family whose daughter was brutally murdered on 10/7 by Hamas. But 10/7 wasn't their biggest nightmare because it took them weeks to identify the body of their daughter because she had been so brutally murdered past the point of detection. That is what we're dealing with here, people. People who raped and murdered innocent Jews and Israelis simply for being Jewish, simply for being in a democracy. Because our allies know that we are the light in the darkness. God chose the Jewish people, not because we are better than anyone else, but because he knows we can handle his mission to heal the world. And yes, we are a tiny people, both in size and numbers. We are short. I'm actually tall for a Jew at 5'9½". But we're a small people. I think most of the Jews in the world, this may be the whole religion here today. We're small, which is why we need allyship. And the Christian-Jewish unity is one of our biggest allyships that we have today. And this is true. I'm asked constantly from people. They say, Zach, for doing what you're doing, you must get death threats every day. And I do get an occasional death threat, and I don't love them. But more than I get death threats, more than I get negative comments and inboxes, I get messages from Christians around the world telling me that they are following my content, they are reposting it, and that they are standing with the Jewish people in our darkest hour of this century. And it's not just Christians, it's Muslims too. There are so many amazing moderate Muslims. This isn't a fight between the Jews and the Muslims like the media might want you to think. This is a fight between good and evil. It's a fight against Jews and our allies against jihadism. I'm asked this question constantly. Well, how do you feel about the death tolls in Gaza? And it breaks my heart, knowing that, yes, we are mostly killing Hamas and their fighters. But are there innocents dying in this war? Of course. But we are fighting for their children's futures too, because they have no freedom of thought, and Palestine cannot be free until they are free. And another thing about prayer, and I encourage you all to do this. When I pray now, I make it a mission to pray for the innocent children in Gaza, in the West Bank, the children of a future Palestine. I pray for them first before my own people. And I do that to remind myself that we are different than the other side. They may pray on us, we pray for them. We pray for them. We pray for a better future for them and their children. And I am talking way too long. Sorry, guys. As the Jew on stage here, we love to talk, and I think I reflected my people well. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for these powerful speakers we have coming up. And now I would like to bring to the stage the amazing founder of the Philos organization, Luke Moon. Let's give it up, guys, for him. Thank you so much, Luke.
Well, this is truly amazing to see so many people here. In May, I talked to my staff, and I said, let's pull the permit for the mall, just so that the Hamas guys don't get it. So I figured we'd do it early, and here we are. It's really quite spectacular. I woke, like many of you, on October 7th with the news that Hamas had broken through the gate separating Gaza from Israel. And it shook me to my core. By that afternoon, the Fields Project, we had organized a briefing. We helped organize the first rally in New York City and in Washington, D.C. On Monday, we had a 24-hour prayer vigil on that day. But it really isn't, at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about what happened on that day in Israel. And it's about standing with the people of Israel on this day. I had the opportunity to go to Israel twice since October 7th, bringing high-level dignitaries. And I can't get out of my head the picture of a father holding his child, and they are charred black because they were burned to death. That breaks my heart. As a father, it hurts. But I also I think about a guy like Ben Shimroni. And Ben was at the Nova Festival, and he filled his car with friends, and they drove off, and they got to safety. And then Ben's like, I got to go back and get more. So he turned his car around and went back, and he got more. And he drove them to safety. And then he dropped them off, and he said, I got to go back and get more. And so he goes back again. 3 times he goes back. The 3rd time he's murdered by Hamas. And in his car was Romy Gonen. She was taken hostage and is currently being held by Hamas, one of the 101.